So great to see all of you, and welcome to everyone at home on Facebook. My name is Kelly. I'll be doing the reading. The theme for April is Living Everyday Wonder, Creativity. The topic for today is the mustard seed of faith. Charlie Curtis invites you to contemplate the following. It is done unto you as you believe. What do you believe? Most people meditate on their cell phones. What do you meditate on? And Ernest Holmes' alternate way of describing faith is to use the words know or accept. He wrote, "We must consciously know that we can use creative power. The more complete such acceptance on our part, the more completely we shall be able to use this power for definite purposes." Let's declare together, I accept and know that I can use creative power for definite purposes. My faith is strong. And now it's my honor to introduce our good and dear friend and teacher, Charlie Curtis.
Many of you know Charlie, but some of you may not, so I just thought I would share a few things. Charlie, first and foremost, I think, is a true mystic. And I've known him for a very long time, since like 1990, when we first met in Science of Mind Church years ago in this area. And at present, he's the director of the CSL, Centers for Spiritual Living study group that's in Reading, Pennsylvania. And in addition to that, he's a board-certified hypnotherapist. He is a master neuro-linguistic programmer, a certified mindfulness-based stress reduction trainer, and also he has been working with clients professionally for 35 years to help them be more relaxed and healthier using mindfulness and other, all these other techniques that he has in his toolkit. So we're so grateful that he is with us today. I'd like you to just give a round of applause, just a heartfelt round of applause for Charlie Curtis.
So I have some good news for you. God is all there is. Now, if you're new to Science of Mind, you might have no idea what I just said, what it means, or what it has significance. So let me give you some significance. I've been working with physician-referred patients with chronic illness, and I make their chronic illnesses disappear. So I know about 30 different protocols, most of them from the scientific end of things, so they're all evidence-based. But I also know Science of Mind, and everything's in agreement, and it's all coming together in a wonderful way. But just to give you an idea of what all this means, it means I'm in my 70s now, and most people I know in their 70s are beginning to fall apart if they haven't fallen apart already. And I know that's not necessary, it's not required. It is not required to decline. And so I'm going to suggest today that if you are considering that possibility, that you decline the decline. Just to give you an idea of what doesn't have to happen, you don't have to get osteo and rheumatoid arthritis, you don't have to get cancer, you don't have to get diabetes, you don't have to get autoimmune, you don't have to get thyroid, you don't have to get skin problems, you don't have to get neurological problems. I could go on for a long time. A book was published 2 weeks ago in the scientific community that supports everything I'm talking about today. And the first sentence in the first chapter of that book is, "Cancer is no longer a death sentence." Now, we've known that for a long time, but they're just figuring it out, but that's okay. They'll catch up sooner or later. So I'm going to start with the invocation my father always used. He was a minister in the Methodist Church, and he's probably here somewhere floating around watching me. But he loved to start his services by saying, "This is the day which the Lord hath made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it." Your dreams are waiting for you to come true. Many people dream of COVID and scarcity and troubled politics. Others dream of harmony and prosperity and success and good works that lead to peace on earth. What do you dream of? It's done unto you as you believe. What do you believe? Where do you get your inspiration from the bad news or the good news? As for me, I lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. How about you? Where does your help come from? I now have a reading from Frederick Bales. He was a physician who was diagnosed with diabetes back before there was insulin, and the doctors who diagnosed him said he was going to live a short and terrible life, and then he was going to die a miserable death. And he decided not to. He ran into science of mind, and he learned how to do this stuff, and he spent the rest of a long and fruitful lifetime healing thousands of people. And he also became a friend of and wrote books with Dr. Ernest Holmes, who was the founder of Science of Mind. So he's a cool dude. So this is from his book, Your Mind Can Heal You. So can every person today who still suffers under the darkness of a false belief in the inevitability of illness step out into freedom from sickness of all kinds, as millions are doing. But he can never step out as long as he denies the possibility of this freedom. Meanwhile, he sits and hugs his sickness belief closer to his bosom, while others are using the law of mind to emancipate them from the belief in and the distress of sickness. Every experience is first an idea held in mind. Everything that we ever enjoy was first an idea held in mind. And everything that robs us of happiness was likewise first an idea. Mind is entirely neutral in its creative activity. It works ceaselessly, even while we sleep, creating into form that which we mentally accept as ideas. You want to know how to get sick? Have a day in your life when you decide you can't have what you want. That's when the seed is planted, and sooner or later, that seed will turn into a plant, and you will have an illness, and it will blindside you, and you won't know where it came from, but that's where it came from, the day when you decided you couldn't have what you wanted. So now I want to talk a bit about the theology of mind-body healing. I teach mindfulness professionally, and I started off in an ashram back in the 70s. I spent 2 years in the ashram, and since then I've meditated, last count, 54,750 hours. So that's not because I'm so good at it, it's because I can't stop, because I'm totally and thoroughly addicted to it. But there was a study, which I heard about yesterday. I was listening to a broadcast, and they said that they studied people who were meditators, long-term meditators, and those who were not. And the people, and this was with respect to COVID, and they drew this data over the last 2 years. The people who were long-term meditators basically did not get COVID. The very few who did got it not severely and got rid of it very quickly. There was a huge shift in their blood work compared to the control groups. And this was a cross-section. It was people who had been vaccinated and people who had not. So obviously, meditation makes a heck of a difference. And we already know that, and the scientific community, the leading edge scientific community, they already know that. And the rest of the scientific world is checking it out. They're sticking their toe in the water, but they're still skeptical. But what was interesting was the guy who did this study that I was listening to him talk yesterday, he was a skeptical scientist. He didn't believe it. He didn't think there was going to be a correlation with anything. And so he was amazed, and now he's excited. And he was from University of California, San Diego, so it was from a well-known institution. So some exciting stuff is happening. So I'm going to break down mindfulness into 3 levels today. Mindfulness level 1, you're miserable. You're mindful of the fact that you're not having any fun. You're miserable. Mindfulness level 2, you're happy, you're relaxed, you're peaceful. Your body's doing much better than when you're unhappy. And mindfulness level 3, would be the people in this room. No, you're blissful. Now, the science people have gotten involved and have said there are 7 neuropeptides that we secrete when we get happy. And we get happy because of the neuropeptides, but everything all lines up. And when people take street drugs, they're trying to come up with this combination. And of course they can't, and it's illegal, and it has side effects, and it's habit forming. Whereas your own chemicals are free, and you can't get arrested for being high on your own chemicals. So this is exciting stuff. So what I'm doing right now is giving you the highlights. If you want to find out how to do all this, come this afternoon. Tell you how to meditate, tell you how to raise your immune function, tell you how to get into a place where you can protect your body from illnesses, or if you have them, how to get rid of them. And I'm going to mention along the line that you have a bunch of people here called practitioners and ministers that can help you do that. They're trained in getting you into that state of mind where there is no place for illness, because there's no illness in the mind of God, and the mind of God is all there is. Is there something more going on than just three-dimensional life? Most people don't think so. They think what they see is what they get, and they don't like what they see. They're unhappy, and an unhappy body is an unhealthy body. So they're unhealthy. So what do we want to do if we want to get healthy? Well, we have to enter the altered state, a state altered from normal conscious awareness. And to do that, we get into a state of mind, and the first thing we discover is this is a spiritual universe and God is in charge. Most people will say there is no God, but if you go into the altered state, God is so easy to find. He's right there, so is she. They're hanging out together. Well, I'm going to talk about something a man named Jesus said a couple thousand years ago that nobody has proved wrong. People asked him about healing, and he said, "It is done unto you as you believe." And then he didn't say, "I have healed you." He said, "Your faith has healed you." Isn't that interesting? He didn't say, "I did it." He said, "Something that you have called your faith. That's what healed you." And then he said, "Believe that ye have it, and ye shall have it." That's kind of weird. But what he meant was, believe in advance that ye have it, and ye shall have it. So believe in advance that you have it. That's what faith is. So have some faith, and then it will come. And then they said, the prayer of faith shall save the sick. So this faith stuff is pretty important. It'll save the sick. Well, that's something that we all want. So how much of this faith that will save the sick do we need? Well, he said all we need is a grain of mustard seed. And the mustard seed is one of the smallest seeds there is. I remember in Sunday school they gave one to me in a little plastic ball about this big. And, us guys went out in the hall and rolled them down the hall. We thought they were fun to play with. But now it has more of a significance to me. Because if you're sick and you want to get well, what do you need to do? You need to reach the tipping point. You need to reach the point at which you have more fear, or is it less fear? What does life give us? Life gives us more fear, more fear, more fear. You watch the CDC all day long. They fill you full of fear. That causes your immune system to tank. So when you listen to the CDC, you're welcoming COVID. So all society wants to talk about is more fear, more fear, more fear. And yet we need to get to faith. We need to reach the tipping point of faith. When you reach the tipping point, you tip towards health and you heal. And even if you made that decision a long time ago, I can't have what I want, you tip toward faith and then you heal. So we no longer have a capricious God who likes that person but doesn't like that person, or that person prayed longer and louder, and that person came from a bad neighborhood, so they don't get healed. God's love never fails, because God's love is all there is. All there is health. There's nothing but perfect health. We mess it up by stepping on the garden hose of life and then wondering why nothing is coming out. But God's love never fails. So it's faith in His love that turns the key in the lock. So that's what we want to do. We want to turn the key. We want to make it happen. So faith in His love is what does that. And along the way, you get the gifts of the Spirit. You get to hear the still small voice. So you get to hear guidance all the time, every day, all day long. Unless you get upset and you can't hear it, but then you have to come back and relax and get back into meditation. There's this thing called the Father within. Well, we call God the Father because God acts like a loving father. He cares for you. He takes care of you, and all that good stuff. And here in Science of Mind, we celebrate the Divine Mother as well. It's the Father, Mother, God. Whatever it is, it'll give you a hug and kiss you on the forehead and make you feel better. So then we have this thing called the Holy Spirit, which is simply your breath and your life and everything in your life, and it's appearing through you, in you, as you. The Holy Spirit is that thing that is life itself, but you don't get to experience it unless you pay attention and look for it and acknowledge it and appreciate it. So that's what you learn how to do here. And when that happens, you get that thing called the peace that passeth all understanding, and that's very cool, because most people look for peace and never find it. And yet here, a place like this, peace is all there is, because we're in that place. So it all comes down to meditation. So science of mind is a spiritual healing discipline with a 100-year track record, actually more than that if you go back into the historical antecedents. And so we know that all these things are true, have been true, will always be true, could not be true, because this is how the universe works. So you're in the right place. And if you want to get healed, you're in the right place. If you want to stay healthy, you're in the right place. And one thing we've learned is there's a difference between the prayer of petition and the affirmative prayer of thanksgiving. The prayer of petition is, please God, heal me from this horrible disease which I know I can't get better from. And the affirmative prayer of thanksgiving is, thank you, God, for revealing yourself to me as life itself, as my very breath, as the life impulse in me that is increasing even as I dwell on it more and more in meditation. So now, what's going on with this thing called meditation? So, and all of this is documented on that sheet that was in your chair. You don't have to look at it, but you have some notes to take with you. The first level of meditation, I called it 0 because it doesn't really count. It's really nothing. But it's the place where most people in the world spend most of their time. It's the unhappy place. In science-based medicine, we call it the fight or flight response. In metaphysics, we call it the trance of scarcity, because it puts you in a state of consciousness where you believe there is not enough and I am not enough, and that drives the life of most people. They're always afraid. They're always feeling that there's not enough and that they're not up to the task. And so everybody's fighting with each other and trying to sit on Uncle Scrooge's money bin. We're going to talk about Uncle Scrooge's money bin this afternoon. I don't know if some of you are old enough to know about Uncle Scrooge, but he had this big money bin. He was a cartoon character, and he had to sit on it. He loved it. He just filled it up with money, and then he would sit on his money, and that represented his wealth to him. And we're going to talk about why that's not really wealth this afternoon. But one of the things that happens is that when you're in this unhappy place, spiritual healing doesn't work. When you're unhappy, you can't get healed. This is where sickness lives. And so if you want to get well, you have to get out of it. So you have to find somebody who's out of it in a good way, who can take you into that place where you can be into something really good. And that's what meditation is, and that's what you learn when you come here. And what's the first thing that happens? Well, the beginning of healing is the descent into a calm, quiet, and altered state. So that's the beginning of healing. It's that, we call it the relaxation response in medicine. It's just a place where your body goes into a healthy state. And then the next thing that happens is you get the awareness of peace, which deepens into that peace that passeth all understanding. So the first thing that hits is you get a feeling of relief, and it quickly goes into peace. Then you start to get impressions from the Holy Spirit, and that's our guidance. And when that guidance comes to you, and it's always there, but we can't hear it when our mind is screaming at us about all the bad things in the world. But when you relax and listen and get quiet and get peaceful, all of a sudden the guidance is everywhere. It's called solution consciousness, and life works. Life is easy. Then the next thing that happens is you come into an awareness that you're surrounded by abundance everywhere all the time. It's obvious, it's clear. You cannot not see it because it's everywhere, but you can only see it in the altered state. And then the next level you go to is that you are loved by life everywhere, all the time, that life actually physically loves you, that this universe is life and it physically loves you. Can't see it in normal consciousness, but you can see it, it's totally obvious in the altered state. And then you find that you are connected to everyone, everywhere, all the time. And once you're connected, you couldn't possibly hurt or harm any other living human being. You could only be there for them. You could only love them. You could only lift them up. So this being connected solves a lot of issues. And then the last thing you discover is the mystical state, that we are not the victim of life, as most people believe, but that we are life. That this peace, this guidance, this abundance, this love, and this connectedness is God itself, and is closer than breathing and nearer than hands and feet. So when you learn how to do this stuff, you don't have to run to the doctor anymore. You either learn how to do it to yourself, by yourself, or if you're still in the learning process, you can run to a practitioner and they'll help you through the process. What ends up having to happen is you don't have to run to the doctor anymore. Not for little things, not for big things. I've been to the doctor twice in 43 years. And if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have had to go those 2 times either. So this stuff really does work. So utilize your practitioners and your ministers for healing health. They are a resource. We're going to go into this in huge detail this afternoon, but 20 minutes a day of meditation will increase your immune function so that you are safe from pretty much everything, and it will initiate healing of current health problems. If you have a chronic health issue, it will simply go away. So let's do a real quick meditation here. So just close your eyes. I'm going to ask you to come into a state of concentration. So just be aware of your breath, your body, and your senses. Not trying to change it, just being with it as it is. And now, contemplation, just be aware of your thoughts, whatever they are, as they are. No need to change them. And now moving into a state of choiceless awareness, where you're aware of all of life, everything, just as it is, without having to change it. And now entering into a state of contemplative prayer. Say to yourself, silently to yourself, after me, I allow the Christ consciousness to express through me. And this is all silently to yourself, as calm. I allow the Christ consciousness to express through me, as quiet. I allow the Christ consciousness to express through me, as peace. I allow the Christ consciousness to express through me as guidance. I allow the Christ consciousness to express through me as abundance. I allow the Christ consciousness to express through me as love. I allow the Christ consciousness to express through me as connectedness. I allow the Christ consciousness to express through me as all of life. And so for a minute, just being relaxed and at ease, as you allow life to flow through you as pure and perfect life, pure and perfect health, cannot be stopped, cannot be nullified, cannot be made to disappear, for it is all there is. For God is all there is, and so it is.
Thank you, Charlie. We're feeling very calm now, so I'm going to get you on wanting to be on your feet, but you stay relaxed. I'm going to bring Dean up. And that Christ consciousness within us is the light.